Okay, hi everyone, for the last time maybe. So last but not least, we're gonna start this very last session together. So we're going to talk about AI empowering citizens. We're very lucky to have Jacques and Joachim here to talk about their projects and the latest research. What we will do here to really focus on project building all together and making sure that in an hour and a half we have further ideas on specific practical problems that we can tackle through AI, is having these two presentations within the panel, and then we will give the audience the possibility to talk about specific projects. The last few days in preparing this session with Renato, a few projects caught our attention, so we'll give specifically a chance for them to talk first, 3 of them, and you will see what you could basically contribute to within this project. I would really like to emphasize the fact that within this very last session, we want all of you to be able to participate if you want. You already have like the Pigeonhole application, if you may, and then the floor will be yours. Thank you very much. I leave you the mic.
Thank you very much. Welcome everyone. So the first presentation is going to be Joaquin. That's the right pronunciation?
Yes, practically. Joaquin.
Okay, cool. Go for it.
So first of all, thank you so much for having me here. It's a great pleasure to have this opportunity. And my presentation is going to be slightly different from what we have seen till now, because I came here with solutions, neither with certainties. I bring here problems and I bring here a lot of doubts. I work in the Autonomous University of Barcelona. My other affiliations are leading cities. I'm the coordinator of the network in Spain. We are a non-profit foundation that we make technology transfer among countries, among continents, and always focalizing in projects that they are gender neutral, that they are sustainable, and they have a real social application. My other organization, it's ICRAC, it's the International Committee for Robot Arm Controls. We are very focalized right now in the campaign Stop Killer Robots. I'm not going to talk about that, but it's going to be also important because I'm going to talk about human meaningful control in smart cities, and especially related with artificial intelligence. So first of all, I would like to make a brief analysis about technology as a promise, because what we are living here today, it's nothing new. We have lived it so many other times in history. There was a moment some decades ago where the nuclear industry was promising a bright future of safe energy, clean energy, and they were going to bring energy to the world. And we live it again in the 90s, where the GMO industry promises to end with the hunger in the world. And we are in 2018, and we perfectly know where we are. We know that so many technologies that we are dealing with are double-use technologies. In the nuclear, we had the Manhattan Project, and now in the artificial intelligence world, we are dealing with MADEM Project, this new collaboration between Google and the Secretary of Defense of the United States, that maybe it's going to be the next Manhattan. So we have to be very carefully. And I'm not a real optimistic guy. And this is going to be all along my presentation. I'm not saying with that of course, artificial intelligence has good social uses, but we have to be truly careful. And especially because some of these projects that we are living are coming back again. In the GMO industry, we have the Terminator gene, and we have had huge debates about substantial equivalence principle and about labeling. And this discussion about labeling, it's very similar to the discussion that we are having right now in relation with Google Duplex, for example. This artificial intelligence capable of making phone calls, and we are discussing right now, do this artificial intelligence have to identify itself as an artificial intelligence? Yes, of course. As a GMO product, should be labeled as a GMO product. This is basics of ethics. The same as explicit consent when we are retrieving data. And one of the real problems that we are facing from is this data management. So many people are talking about data, and my approach is slightly different because we are moving towards a society that we are in a crossroad between Orwell and Huxley. We are in this new brave world, and we have fear. We have fear of the uses of this technology and the uses of this data, especially because data all along history has shown how dangerous it is. And I'm going to use two examples that are pretty radical. And they are radical basically because I want to create awareness. Data has been used in the last century with horrible, horrible purposes. If we remember the Holocaust, when the Nazi regime invaded some Western countries, the census, the registries were used to exterminate Jewish population in Europe. If we compare the situation between the extermination in Belgium and the extermination in the Netherlands, in Belgium, more or less 40% of the Jewish community was exterminated, and in Netherlands was a 75%. There were so many motives. I'm not just determining one, but data was one of the important ones. Dutch people were very accurate, making registries of ancestors, registries of religion. And we have other examples. For example, Rwanda. Data was also used to exterminate a part of the population. So we have to be very, very, very careful. We have to establish boundaries. We have to establish legal frameworks. And we have to have clear that there are set of data that never should be gathered. This is an important thing. Of course, we cannot trust the private sector, but neither the public administration. Because nowadays we have a set of regimes that we don't know how they can evolve in future. So a state with too much information, it's a dangerous state. And we have to have this thing clear in our minds. Talking about data, we know that nowadays we don't have to wait like in the nuclear industry. They have 3 Mill Islands, they have Chernobyl. Maybe Cambridge Analytica, it's our 3 Mill Island. It's this attention that we needed to pay because democracy is something very, very fragile. It's very easy to manufacture consent. It's easy to manipulate public opinion with the tools that we have right now. So if we want real empowered citizens, if we want real empowered communities, we just can't say, okay, we are going to let them manage their data, we are going to make them owners of their data, because temptation to sell things are very, very high, and so many things are at stake right now. So we have to be truly careful with these things. And one of the things that we need to do in relation with empowering communities is breaking the filter bubble, because there are so many misunderstandings about empowering communities. If we believe that empowering a community is generating applications for citizens to choose between a tree and a palm tree in the park of the neighborhood, this is a bad joke and this is problematic. Empowering, it's giving them access to information, to critical thinking tools, and to creativity. And the actual evolution of artificial intelligence has bright side, of course, but it has so many, 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 many shadows. And we, in the organizations, in the university, we are working in giving response, in creating standards for the city, in creating other kind of approaches to this phenomena. But we find ourselves pretty alone sometimes. This is why I'm happy to be here to ask you for help, for partnership, for collaboration. We have a big problem and a big opportunity in our hands, and it's our responsibility to convert it in an opportunity. The other topic I want to talk is about human meaningful control. Basically, because we have to understand technology inserted in a context. Technology is not something neutral. It's not ethically neutral. Technology is just a magnifier of human willing. And we know what kind of societies we have. When we are saying we are going to let artificial intelligence to reproduce our behavior, to learn from us. Do we really want to do that? We have racist societies, we have homophobic societies, we have demophobic societies, we have misogynist societies. We have to take that into account. This is very, very, very important, and so many of the approaches that I have here these days, it's just the technology outside the society context, and we cannot do that because it can bring so many, many, many problems, and that's why in my city, my university, in the research groups I'm involved, we are having huge debates and huge conversations about meaningful human control. I came from a field more specialized in weapons, in lethal autonomous systems, and of course, in this area, nobody doubts, there is so many people that doubt that we need meaningful human control. But also when we are managing data, also when we are managing automatic process. For example, in universities, now we are using artificial intelligence to assign the grants of the students. We are saying who or who not is going to receive money to make their career. We cannot let machines do that only for a reason of human dignity. And this is another concept that we have to explore. All this appropriation of technology, of human roles and processes in our society can difficult so many processes related with minorities. Here are some press release how algorithms can bring down minorities credit. Facebook will add more human review in targeting options. The tyranny of algorithms, it's part of our lives. Soon they cultivate everything we do. We are in the same state as we have been with previous technologies. We are afraid and we have to face front to all these risks. And we have a super optimistic approach to this phenomena. We can be avoiding talk about the risk that this technology has, as any other kind of technology, because it's going to be used by humans. Humans that can have good intentions and humans that maybe don't have these good intentions. For ending, I would like to end with a quote of one of my favorite philosophers, Italian Giorgio Colli. It's got the last phrase. He said, "Modern scientists have not yet come up with something that was obvious to the ancient, that it's necessary to silence knowledge destined for the few, that formulas are dangerous abstract formulations capable of fatal evolutions, harmful in their applications, must be valued in advance, and in all its scope, by who has discovered them, and consequently, they must be jealously hidden, stolen from advertising. Greek science did not achieve great technological development because it did not want to reach it. With silence, science scares the state and is respected. The state can only live, fight, and strengthen itself with the means offered by the culture. It's something that knows perfectly. The head of the tribe depends viscerally from the sorcerer." So thank you so much, and I hope to have a lot of questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Håkan. Sorry. Thank you. No, it's great. So we're going to have questions right now or afterwards. Okay, so I'll do my talk as well. So let's just get to the presentation. There we go. So I think what I want to do is maybe start with that. So does this work as well? Yeah, maybe this is fine. So I'm you describe yourself as not necessarily optimist, but not. So I describe myself as more optimistic, but I'm also a realist. So I'm a smart technology entrepreneur, and I built my whole career on artificial intelligence. Did my PhD on recurrent neural nets and AI and stuff, and then started my first AI company. I sold that to General Electric, and I had time to think about next moves afterwards. And I got inspired by visionary leadership in the World Economic Forum and United Nations, and pretty much just looking at what global organizations are doing and some leadership there. And for me, just thinking about next steps is really all about shaping a better future in the smart technology era. How can I actually use AI and technologies to actually shape a better future? Now, I'm based in Cape Town, South Africa, and I'm also concerned about Africa. That Africa can be left behind, and we need Africa to also participate. We can't have that continent that's with all the people there. There's so much promise, so much potential, but there's so much problems and issues. And the question is, how can we use smart technology? How can we use AI? How can I apply even my skills? How can we collaborate with other organizations, with governments, with for-profit for business organizations? How can we work together in solving the problems, the sustainable development goals, etc.? So you will see, I'm not going to talk about that, but my background history is really all about that. So what I've decided for this particular talk, so obviously we're going to talk about empowering citizens, so I'm going to get back to smart cities. So the title of this particular talk is really, just going back to the start, is really about health, water, smart education, smart technology services for African smart cities. We do have the same problem in Africa around, you see a lot of people getting into cities. You see a lot of squatter camps. You deal with, Andrew Funk is going to talk about homelessness. All of those type of things are very relevant, very real. So how do we deal with these type of things? And there are a bunch of other things that I'm also involved in, but one of the things that I've started is, and that's going to be the fourth bullet there, I'm actually going to start with that, and that's about AI community and data platform for Africa. So we want to network together the critical resources in Africa to start working together and interacting with international communities as well, and creating the necessary skills. And not only that, but also to get people together to actually help solve problems. So I'll be talking about that briefly. So that's briefly outlined. So I'm going to start talking about AI community and data platform. I'm also going to touch on health. I know there's a separate track on that, but that's something I'm deeply involved in. And then water. So in Cape Town, we experience, they talked about day zero. That never happened, fortunately, yet. So we can talk about that. But we are actively looking at collaborating with governments, with non-profit organizations, and also businesses. We've got a company called Water Mathematics, where we're looking at a proper holistic solution in getting real-time information around water losses and trying to address this in a proper way. So it's about operationalizing IoT, AI, big data analytics around all of this. So I'll quickly talk about that as well. And then education. I'm also an investor in companies, so I've invested in some educational companies, smart educational companies, so I quickly want to talk about that as well. Okay, so this was just my way of, we're talking about the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. We know that smart cities is kind of also bringing them together. So on the right hand there, I'll talk about AI community and data platform for Africa. So I've got a few slides talking about the Machine Intelligence Institute of Africa. So that's like pretty much focused on AI, data science. So I've got a few slides on that specifically. But you will see the rest of the goals there. And what I did there was to actually map it to at least 5 of the specific sustainable development goals. Obviously, smart cities as well. The last section of this talk is actually going to be about empowering citizens. So we are going to talk about that. And we can use that maybe as in facilitation of what we're doing here. So that is the detail. So let's get into it. So on this particular slide, I was just showing the 4 tracks and how these particular projects that I've mentioned there, how it actually maps to the 4 tracks as well. So I'll skip that. So the first thing I want to quickly talk about is AI Community and Data Platform for Africa. What's really great about what's happening. So I've started this Machine Intelligence Institute of Africa 2 years ago. You can go to machineintelligenceafrica.org. It's a non-profit. The focus is really transforming Africa through machine intelligence, AI. And obviously I want to leverage my background and experience in creating companies and solving and using AI to actually solve problems. So what is MIIA? MIIA is an innovative community and accelerator for machine intelligence or AI and data science, research and applications. I do have a research background. I think it's also very, very important as part of that, but pretty much to help transform Africa. And I'm saying transform Africa, but it could apply to emerging other continents, other areas, other places in the world as well. So this is what we've done. So you can see there's a list of partners, and we had some discussions with the World Bank and Gates Foundation as well. But those are a lot of the companies that's been involved in sponsoring events, hackathons, and just a lot of the gatherings. We've got a bunch of projects that I will quickly talk about as well, that speaks to the Sustainable Development Goals as well. Currently, there's about 2,050 registrations across the MIIA channels as well, so it's growing. There's interest. People from all walks of life and different disciplines, physicists and chemists and actuaries, and people are joining this. So anyway, so that's that. I maybe just want to quickly mention there is some very interesting partners. So obviously IBM, Microsoft, and a bunch of other companies. There's PwC, Deloitte. You will see the Data Science Nigeria. So we're trying to hook up with other organizations in this field. So we're not trying to compete. We're trying to collaborate. It's really all about how can we solve problems. And we've got a good network of people that are very keen to contribute and help. And that just shows the growth path over the last 2 years, effectively. A lot more events, a lot more happening. This is just, again, showing the collaboration with Data Science Nigeria. And also, I know there's people from Kenya and Rwanda and so for other places in Africa. So that's great to see in other African cities. So we are also trying to communicate with, well, I'm from Cape Town, but Lagos, Nigeria, Nairobi, etc. So there's all sorts of communications and sharing happening. For instance, last year we participated in the first data science bootcamp. There was about 150 data scientists in that data science Nigeria just when they started. And we had about almost 10 experts from our side just participating via Hangouts to help guide those guys on that side as well. And it's vice versa. So we had actually people there coming to our events as well. So it's really great to see. Then, if I can go to the next slide, there we go. So if you go, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but if you go to the Machine Intelligence Africa.org website and you go to projects, you will see a list of African problems that maps to the Sustainable Development Goals. And the whole idea is to actually submit those projects and then get proper funding and actually start solving it using the community that we've built up. And there's some application projects, research projects, etc. But it's not just us. So we've just recently, one of my companies, well, my key AI company now is Cortex Logic. But there's another company called XPRIZE, and they've started this Zindi, like a Kaggle of Africa. And when we saw that, we said, that's fantastic. We want to actually have a data platform where we can have data competitions, because that's part of what we want to do with MIIA. So if we collaborate here, we can actually accelerate that. So we've been funding that, but I think that would be awesome if there's a proper funding. Also, so we've got some projects around that as well. So the next few slides are just talking a little bit about that, what the platform is all about. So I just want to make people aware of that in Africa, there's visionary leadership and people trying to execute around creating communities, creating the data sets, gathering things, and doing something about the problems. So anyway, so I'll stop there. On the health side, so health is such an important area. You know, the Bill and Melinda Gates School, they spend quite a bit of money in Africa, TB, and there's so many diseases. Even in Western Cape, that's a big problem right there as well. But what we've seen, there's a great opportunity to create a multi-sided platform environment where we can have producers and consumers, and there's data and there's requests, and we can facilitate all of that. So there's quite a bit of stuff going on with government, with the South African Medical Research Council. We are looking at, I think, Microsoft potentially involved there as well, and other tech players as well. But we are looking at creating a proper environment that you can do precision medicine, for instance. And we're working actually with Professor Musa Mslanga from UCT, and also Next Biosciences, and there's a bunch of companies there where we're trying to collaborate and trying to see how we work together to operationalize around health as well. And that's with Synergy specifically, and FEMI as one of the parts of the big data stack. It's all about big data governance, privacy by design, all of those type of things, because that needs to be managed in a proper way. So all the electronic health records, all the unstructured data, structured data needs to be managed, so you can actually create kind of an app store around that. So just want to mention that initiative as well. On the waterfront, just briefly, water data analytics platform. So obviously it's very acute, the problems around water, the water losses, and water is becoming such a big issue internationally, obviously everywhere. But the good thing is there are really visionary leadership, and we've got the right individuals that's got their basically decades of experience around water and how to do these kind of things. So we're looking at water balances, what's going in, what's going out, aquifers, you're looking at the whole spectrum, all the consumers, and you go all the way down to the detail level, to citizen level, effectively. So there's a lot of information, but there's a lot of gaps. But this is an opportunity also from an IoT perspective to have bottom-up information, to get more reliable information around this as well. So very excited about this project as well. And then the last thing before I get to the smart cities, the smart citizens one. Do I need to point to that? Okay, so, and the last one is around education. So that is a major problem, and it's a big passion of mine as well. We live in a smart technology era. That is, we talk about a fourth industrial revolution. I talk about a smart technology era. And we need to urgently empower the people, the citizens, the people in Africa, specifically, but around the world, to actually be active in this world, in this. So what we've done here, I think firstly you need the infrastructure. So you need access to, so I've listed it there. Everyone should have affordable access to the digital world. That's a big problem in Africa right now. So we need to address that. We need extreme acceleration of 21st century skills. And there's a bunch of other things there that's mentioned as well. Anyway, so I'm actually going to skip some of this. So this is just ideas around smart technology, center of excellence, and all of that. And actually, how do you expand creating this type of thing around Africa? So there we go. So so this is just about my company. I'll just stop there. So we're all about creating an AI engine for platform businesses and corporates. The last bit, and this is going to lead the kind of discussion into empowering citizens as well. So I did mention that because it's all important, all those things, water, health, all of that is very important for citizens as well. So this is from a study from Deloitte where they were talking about basically, if you look at recent smart city trends, it's about empowering citizens on the rise. And I think it's very important to have this focus. And Alexander and Renato, when they thought about the tracks, I thought it was great that you guys thought about this specific, to give this emphasis. What Deloitte is basically saying is that we need to tailor public services to increase resource efficiency. And well, that's kind of a generic way of stating what we need to do. And it was quite interesting. Then on the right-hand side, they're showing where is pretty much what is getting attention, what should get attention. Just based on interviews and talking to various smart cities around the world. Governance education, major focus. And that's exactly the case in Africa as well. We talk about even corruption and no transparency, you talk about issues around education is a major problem. In South Africa, it's an absolute major problem. But energy is critical, healthcare, security, all of those are being listed there. And this particular slide, Smart Cities 3.0, is just talking about bringing it all together. It's got to be, to solve these problems, you won't just have a business or just have very specific organizations. It's going to be a complete team effort. It's going to be all the stakeholders, and including the citizens that you want to incentivize. That needs to be part of that. So this is just emphasizing that, engaging citizens to work in collaboration with private corporations and the public sector. And last few slides, just quickly. So this is Frans Albert here. I think he was in the previous discussion. Not sure. There is he. Okay, great. So you must know the Waag Society in Amsterdam. So this was kind of their definition of smart citizens, which I thought was great. So we can obviously, in the panel discussion, talk about this specifically. But I was quite inspired by this because I think there's a lot to learn. It seems like what they're doing there in Amsterdam, I would love to see that we apply this in African cities, in Cape Town, Joburg, Lagos, like Nairobi, etc. But really, it's talking about forming these groups and making it very practical, and where people take responsibility for the places they live and work and love. So anyway, so one can go through that. The slides will be made available. And they also talk about this urban feeds data flow, where you've got you're collecting data, you put in, you instrumenting. You can't do really anything if you don't instrument properly. So this is where IoT plays an incredible role. You measure, you analyze, you distribute, you get that feedback, you look at the behavior, and it's a continuous loop. Even with companies and businesses, when we actually operationalize AI solutions, say for instance, you're looking at personalized on-demand services, and you've got all this big data, structured, unstructured data, smart data layers, you automate the AI, you feed this into workflows or into intelligent virtual assistants. That virtual assistant is like a sensor because it provides information, you can do sentiment analysis, that needs to feed back to the data lake so that you can operationalize, improve your models, etc. But you see the same type of thing here. So it's a dynamic system. It's not just a static thing. You need to update and maintain this. And this is just the Amsterdam group talk about smart citizen approach, and that all the M's here, they meet, they match, they map, they make, they master, they measure, and then they mobilize. And what's great, they talk about the lessons learned and so forth. So I think it would be interesting. I know that Frans Albert, maybe in the panel discussion, we can, I don't know how much you're aware of this, but we can talk about this because this is clearly, I think there's a lot to learn from this. And then finally, what they were advocating here is empowering smart citizens. The old way is kind of the government top-down, the top-down decision-making, as opposed to the new way where we talk about bottom-up decision-making. In the past, it's kind of a linear approach, which is not always scalable. Here we talk about a non-linear approach. Reducing complexity, encouraging complexity, minimizing uncertainty, embracing uncertainty, stifling innovation, and enabling boost in creativity. So, and I think blockchain, I know Andrew Funk is going to talk about that with the homelessness thing as well, but it is obviously very much a part of this as well. So I think on that note, I'll end my presentation, and hopefully this would just help to seed the discussion, the panel discussion. You want to say something?
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you so much. Again, thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you, Joachim. Thank you, Jacques. So the idea, as we mentioned earlier, for this very last session, was to give a stronger voice to the audience. And with Renato, when we designed this track this day, we were very lucky to meet a lot of you that wanted to attend the summit, the global summit. And some projects actually caught our attention, and we figured that in a way it would be interesting, even if it's quite fast, in 5 minutes, to hear the projects and see how they can be relevant here to this part of the smart citizens, and how within the audience we could discuss them. So we have 3 projects, and the idea is to go between 3 to 5 minutes each. People are in the audience that will present, and then every one of us in the audience will be able to build on this and try to see how it connects to the global conversation with the panel. And the first one to go on this, as you mentioned, is Andrew Funk, who leads homeless entrepreneurs, and we'll discuss about his project. And the idea is for all of us to see how we could help and how we could scale the project in maybe other cities, for instance.
Okay, thank you very much for introducing me to. My name is Andrew Funk. I'm the founding president of an organization called Homeless Entrepreneur that's based in Spain and Seattle. And what we're doing is empowering homeless people so they can be active citizens again, which is what will make a smart city even smarter. The key factor here is listening to people. we've spent the last few days listening to all the experts around here to understand how we can use AI for good and ending homelessness at the same time, keeping in mind SDG 8 and 11. The scope of what we're doing to understand is, first you need to know what a homeless entrepreneur is. It's a homeless person who's willing and able to tell his story and work to get off the street. And with human intelligence, right now, we're able to reach 20 to 30% of the population. The first year, we helped one person get a job and off the street. Then 4, 16. This year, we should have 156 people in the program. The scalability is that it's doubling every 6 months. In large cities, we can reach up to 1,000 people in 5 years, being active citizens. In order to scale this solution on a global level, I and smart cities must play a key role. A smart city will be even smarter when we end homelessness inside it. The AI HE platform will be a decision-making tool to enable greater accuracy when measuring number of homelessness, their situation, and what they truly need. This data will affect healthcare solutions provided to elderly, determine resource gaps, and provide data that could qualify cities and countries for greater support from federal agencies and philanthropic funds. This information translates directly into funding decisions. Outreach workers, homeless people, and society as a whole need the information they receive to be as precise as possible to build greater trust in society and ultimately fostering active citizen participation. 2 quick success stories. With the IDB, I was in Haiti working, and we got a contact through LinkedIn looking for a programmer. One person in the program got the interview, he got the job. He is now working. He became a father 3 months ago, and he also donated 10% of what he made to reinvest in people like him in the future programs. Another person was in front of Mobile World Congress with a sign that said he's a technician that's working in telecom and unemployed. Thanks to that network, he got a job, and he's currently getting his 3rd paycheck now. If we use AI, we can scale that on a global level. This is the most important thing. And the last thing to explain is, how do we do this? Data collection. We provide free smartphones. There are more smartphones. Everyone here probably has 2 phones or more, and a lot more in their home. We provide them with smartphones and connectivity, and they become a task force, taking a liability, turn it into an asset, in which that person has to participate on a weekly basis, giving data that cities need, that countries need, the UN needs, and everyone, so that way we can come up with better decisions with homeless people, with the people that are running government, and volunteers on the same level. And the most important thing here is matching. In order to match, we have to make sure that people can make better decisions. Companies want to hire the best professionals. They don't want to hire people because there's a discount of 50%. That's not sustainable. But if we're able to get rid of all the waste in which people are wasting their time, doing circles, going around in circles, there's less trust in the homeless community that wants to work, because there's 20 to 30% of the people that are homeless, but they're professionals. I myself was homeless for 1.5 years, and I had 35,000 contacts online, an entrepreneurial spirit, and the desire to get off the street. I was able to solve my situation, and we hope to connect with people during AI for Good to make sure that we can scale it and make sure there are other people besides myself explaining this. So thank you very much, and that's it.
Thank you very much, Andrew, for the presentation of this project. What we will do to make sure that we get in a global conversation with the 5 presentations that we have is continue with the next project and the last one. And after that, we will have the chance to try and figure how all of this might connect and how we find solutions together for the last minutes together. So I will go now with Tim Anderson, having a beautiful project also to present. Yes, if you want. So the idea is to present your project called Mobilis and just to find a way to make another call to action for the audience and see how it could be of help.
About 1 year ago, I moved into a housing cooperative, and I had to sign a charter that said I wouldn't own a vehicle. And everyone else did at the same time, and we just had to get organized to share vehicles. It was very difficult. The insurance companies didn't know what to do with us, how we were going to buy the car. We had to pool our money together. It was a long, drawn-out experience, and but in the end, we put it into place. we've got, instead of 18 cars, we've only got 6. And we've got 3 businesses that have joined us recently. So we've saved a lot of urban space. That's one of the arguments for this, is urban congestion, to get rid of the cars that are in the streets. Every car takes 115 square meters. And we're creating a set of tools that will allow all of you to do the same thing. Open source, a little open source box that you install in the car that you're going to share, and a back end, which is open source, which allows you to sign up, think of all the right things like we did, and we had to learn from bad experiences, and then manage your car as a common good. And that's the important thing in this project, is the car is no longer the property of one person, it's the property of the group. And so that requires a bit of respect and learning to live together. You have to set up guidelines and governance. And it's as a citizen, it's a very good experience managing your own mobility. And what has happened over the last few months is that these families that didn't think it would ever work have joined us. And we've started, when you pay per kilometer, you start realizing how much it really costs the car. Because when you just pay every month your gas and what have you, you don't really know. People change the way they think about mobility, and they move to other forms of mobility. And so now we have transport passes in the pool. We have a cargo bike, 2 cargo bikes. We have electric bikes. And we start thinking of mobility on the whole in an urban environment. So it changes the way people behave. So that's about all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you again. Thank you both of you for keeping it sharp and short, so that everyone can then try and contribute. And the last project that we wanted to hear here in the audience is one that Kenny Chen leads, that you may have heard already in the previous questions. I don't know if you need the mic, or maybe this is fine. Okay. And Kenny Chen is really active in the city of Pittsburgh and would like to share a project with us.
Absolutely, thank you. And I'm not from Pittsburgh, but I've been living and working there for the past 3.5 years, which has been just about the most exciting 3.5 years that I've experienced, and I think might have been the case for the city itself. For those of you who aren't familiar, Pittsburgh used to be an industrial powerhouse, and it had an entire steel industry collapse towards the end of the 1970s. The past 40 years has been essentially trying to rebuild itself, and it's been succeeding in a lot of ways through investments in education, healthcare, research, robotics, all of those kinds of things. And our current mayor, who was inaugurated in 2014, had a lot of very progressive policies that I think might also be helpful in framing the discussion around smart cities and empowering smart citizens. His first day in office, he laid out a vision of essentially what he called an inclusive innovation roadmap. And the whole idea being under the moniker, if it's not for all, it's not for us. And that this rebuilding of the city with all these investments in AI and robotics and whatnot would also be very keenly aware of impacts on the most vulnerable populations, from the homeless to the thousands of refugees and other folks that lived in the city. So the Inclusive Innovation Roadmap had 6 specific components. One just being to enhance the city operations, update 23 departments worth of IT infrastructure, and ensure that security, privacy, all of those kinds of things were actually working. It was very important, number 2, to connect citizens with the city government, enabling different forums and access points, town halls, multilateral opportunities for people to be directly involved in the civic and in the civic processes happening in the city. Another one was to close the digital divide and really look at internet access as a right within the city, and make it so that between public spaces and libraries, everybody has access to the internet, as well as education around digital literacy. And I'll skip some of the others, but I really want to emphasize open data as one of the things that he signed into, Mayor Peduto signed an open data legislation his first day in office. And I was able to help the city build its open data infrastructure. And that in and of itself ends up having a nice cascade of additional effects as different departments and partners are engaged in that process of digital transparency and having machine-readable data outputs and whatnot, everything from the police department to zoning and housing and people making applications for businesses. So we're happy to talk about our processes for that. There's probably what Pittsburgh is best known for is applications of AI and robotics right now. We currently have at least six autonomous vehicle companies that are having their vehicles drive on the road, one of it which Uber has been taking passengers. And those are done in collaboration with research universities and other programs that are simultaneously piloting technologies around smart streetlights to mitigate congestion. I think they've already reduced congestion by more than 44% by just timing things and applying AI and computer vision, ensuring that smart streetlights and other things are in place for IoT infrastructure. And finally, I'll just say that Pittsburgh has found a way to take the values of the SDGs and take ownership in its own kind of way. So a couple of initiatives, one is called P4, which reframes a lot of those values in the context of people, planet, place, and performance. And then there's also a 2030 strategy that is really centered around resilience. And I'm also happy to follow up with people on what that all looks like. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much. So we introduced the day saying that we wanted to stress this idea of smart communities and not only smart city as a place in which we would do tech for tech. I think this is the reason why we want to show that there are very specific and real projects coming from urgent needs within the city for the purpose of these interventions also. And now we open to the floor any questions, and obviously also would like to stress one last time the fact that we would love it if you have any contribution that you think might be relevant in terms of helping us framing one of the problems that we mentioned, or helping us scaling solutions that were designed and proposed to you. So if you have any questions, just open your mic and we'd be glad to try and answer.
Yeah, I'd like to ask Joaquin a question. I'm curious about your understanding or thoughts around liquid democracy, if you've been following that movement, and whether or not you think that could be a useful tool to engage citizens more in continuous democracy rather than once every 4 years. I assume you're familiar with it. If not, I can explain.
Thank you. I believe that nowadays we are living in a moment where democracy is at stake, democracy is in crisis, and in a moment where time goes so fast, it's absurd to believe that voting every 4 years, it's a democratic system. We have to advance new formulas of participation, and we should encourage citizens to take part in policy making. The real problem with so many of these experiences is what are you allowing the citizens to decide? Because we have seen so many cases of citizen empowerment in the last years. We have seen Occupying Wall Street that was crushed by the police. We have seen empowered citizens in Hong Kong crushed by the police. We have seen citizens in Barcelona making a referendum crushed by the police, and we are seeing empowered citizens in Gaza being killed with impunity. So the real question what we are facing from is what is participation and what are the key questions that should be asked to the citizens. And the problem that we are living with liquid democracy, from my perspective, we are living in a filter bubble. We have real partial information about what is happening, and it's really, really easy to nudge people to manipulate, to generate consent about certain topics. So we should put away the pollution in information. For me, this is one of the most important things. Move the information pollution away, have more clear ways to let the people know what's happening, to generate knowledge. There is a theory that it's post-normal science, elaborated by Jerome Ravetz and Silvio Funkovic, and they have a real nice approach through what they call peer review communities. It's like the scholar peer community, but with citizens. What there is no difference between the expert and non-expert. And the most important thing of this experiment is that the community should generate the knowledge about they are going to be discussing after. And this is one of the key points for me.
I've got a question for you as well. Just in terms of, you mentioned in your talk, what type of data should we be careful with? Because you said we should, yeah.
In relation with the data, I believe that we are not talking about pollution data, we are not talking about traffic data, we are talking about personal data, we are talking about religion, sexual orientation, we are talking about these kind of things that it should be prohibited to be asked, to be gathered, but even with algorithms, we should develop, and we are studying this in the university and with other research groups, how to avoid those systems that indirectly allow you to know the religion, the ideology, etc., etc. Because about the data, we should ask ourselves why we need this data. Why are we going to use this data for? And it's very, very, very difficult to justify, know the religion or know the sexual orientation or know these kind of things. I mean, private companies don't need that, and public administration neither. So this is a debate that we should have. Generating regulatory framework in this aspect, it's one of the key points that we should talk and be in a hurry because we are getting late. The problem is that we don't have 1 year, 2 years to make this debate. We need regulatory frameworks right now.
Okay, I see, by the way, is Pigeonhole being updated with the questions? People are, you're most welcome, is it? Okay, so there's a question, your last slide suggests that major scientific breakthroughs like AI should be kept in a safe place. Want to expand?
I believe that we have nowadays like a kind of weird fetish with innovation. We understand that innovation is positive. Innovation is not positive, neither negative. What it's important, it's what we do with this innovation. And I mean, we can talk about the atomic bomb, we can talk about the Terminator gene. They are things that are not bringing peace, are not empowering communities, are not making our democracy stronger. AI, in this stage of development, of course, we cannot hide it from public. But what we should do right now is establish strong frameworks and have very, very clear in our mind that it's sets of data that cannot be gathered. I'm not saying that we should not use this technology. Of course, we should, we have it, and all of you are presenting amazing projects, some of them really, really impressive. I'm not against of that, but we should be careful. And in the actual society, we are all in a hurry. And I see it with my students. We have incubators, we have places where they can develop, and they have these two things. The competition, if I'm not going to do it, another one is going to do that. And we don't have a strong collaboration between technicians, between scientists, data manager, etc., and sociologists, anthropologists, philosophers, etc. And we need to create a common ground for all of us. And we need to elaborate multidisciplinary teams, and we need to develop strong ethical commissions. in all projects developed. And this is a thing that it's not a recommendation that should be a must, especially when we are working with very, very sensible material, because data, it's very, very sensitive, can be used for good and can be used for wrong, and we have the responsibility to avoid these bad uses of technology to the extent that we will be able.
Great, thank you. Andrew, you talked about some practical things that you guys are doing. Maybe if you want to just mention briefly just some of the things that you are looking at, specifics. Yep.
Okay, can you repeat that real quick?
No, so you talked about some very specific things that you are doing to actually help solve specific problems, some practical things that one could do.
Probably the most practical thing that can be done is using what we have in society. It's turning a passive into something active, a liability to an asset. So you have, according to the UN, 100 million people in 2005 that are homeless. Are they in a database? Do we know what they need? And I think the answer is no. So what we have to do first is understand the data, structure it well, and then look for patterns to see how we can help. Obviously, there are issues of good and bad, but let's pretend we want to do something positive with it. So in my opinion, if we're able to collect the data, and we can do that, governments, UN agencies, local and national NGOs, and homeless people can participate. We could take care of getting the data of the 40,000 homeless people in Spain, according to INE, by asking people to participate, but adding value. We're not asking the right questions, we're not asking the right people, and we're not coming up with the right solutions because of that. So I think platforms like AI for Good gives everyone an amazing opportunity to share ideas, to figure out they can actually comply and make these SDGs something more than a pretty pin. And that's what we're trying to do. We're a small organization, but the objectives are quite clear. And we believe that you have to empower the people you're speaking about. When I was in Davos for the World Economic Forum, we slept in a teepee, 6 below zero, which is quite cold. But we wanted to give a voice to homeless people and be coherent. We can't speak about poverty. We can't speak about how we're helping people and not include them in that conversation. And that's all we're trying to do. I slept out in the street in Davos, in Geneva, and that's uncomfortable. And it was raining the first night, and the benches are not made for that. I spoke with a guy who's dealing with urban innovation. Imagine using smart technology to solve that problem. Yep. So, to briefly respond, I think we have to empower the people we're trying to help, because we'll be surprised how intelligent they are.
Thanks. Question there?
Hi, my name is Mara Borgenau, founder of Gringo Web. I'd like to take the opportunity when the gentleman said we should put project out there.
Yep.
Thank you. So there we go.
That's exactly
now, we started 7 years ago with gamification, engaging employees here in Geneva, engaging multinational employees to save resources in a fun way. And behind the game, it was an app. You had certified statistics that you could embed in your CSR reporting. So that was 7 years ago. And today we're talking about citizens, smart cities. We're talking about, obviously what I'm talking about is sustainable development. And looking at Cape Town, we see the water issue. We also know that there's about 20 other cities that are on the map that will face different shortages in the next 30 years. So what if we could engage citizens through gamification, use AI to speed up the data processing, and have smart dashboards, and use also AI to correlate the data, the weather, satellites data, resource measurement, and instead of having people, use their bikes or walk to work or whatnot, put them all on the same challenge. Like, okay, now we're on the water challenge. You're going to take a shower. You're going to cut the water when you brush your teeth. You're going to shower with your friends. You're going to, etc. And anticipate the shortages we're going to be facing by motivating, engaging the citizen in a bottom-up way, and then use AI for what it's worth. It's speeding up and increasing the impact at a pace that we need today. So is this, and of course we could use, looking at the challenge, we could have a challenge for multinational, schools, government, everyone, and then use blockchain to certify the challenges instead of having labels that are not relevant. Use blockchain to certify the savings and give back token to citizens to incentivize them and to have them collaborate. Give them tokens in the form of, create a virtuous circle. You engage citizen, and then in turn they act on resources, and in turn they get rewards that the government or can use back up and so on. So this is my idea. Yesterday, PwC announced that they launched, what they call it, putting AI to work for the planet, the fourth. So I don't know, it seems like we're in the right place to do something.
Absolutely. That is very relevant to things that I'm actively involved in as well, profit and business and non-profit things as well. You know, there's a blockchain company, guys, that's also thinking about these kind of things as well. Just quickly, we've experienced this in Cape Town, where they actually give very specific targets to citizens around how much water can be utilized and all of that, and instructions, and you get high penalties if you exceed that. So, but the big problem is, I think more than 50% of the municipalities, they can't account for water losses. They don't know. They can't. If you look at the water balances, what's going in, what's going out, it's a problem. So, so we need to instrument better. And we need to manage that whole thing better. And you need to have it real time, not 2 years after the fact, that type of thing. So there's things happening right now to try and address this. If you feel the pain, you see the situation, I think that just brings that entrepreneurship, and people want to solve it. So I think we'll see some solutions from South Africa around this. But, and also gamification, all the things you're talking about, this is all part of it. So when I talk about smart technology, it's all part of it. AI, blockchain, IoT, everything is part of it. So it's our toolbox. So we need to provide solutions. Yeah. So good comment there. Yes.
Hi, thank you. I wanted to make 2 comments. Firstly, because we were talking about the inclusion of citizens, I just wanted to acknowledge that actually, as we were discussing all of these projects that are taken up by citizens, that shows that we are actually doing that. And I just wanted to thank all of those people who are actually engaging and doing this, because definitely traditionally it would be a role of a government, of a policymaker, etc. And now we're seeing a massive progress in this respect. And the second comment I wanted to make is a piece of information to give you, as we're talking about the right governance structures and the policies that should be fit for that future that is coming. And at the last couple of weeks ago, we launched AI Global Governance Commission in the UK. It is a global initiative, but it was launched on behalf of the AI group of the All-Party Parliamentary Group in the UK on AI. And that is exactly to prototype a structure that would be agile enough to engage all of the stakeholders and citizens and all of the groups, and look into the vision that we want in the society globally, and look into that structure that would help us deliver that, making sure that the right policies are designed for the right society in the future. Thank you.
That's fantastic. Yep. Any other questions?
Hi, maybe we could take a look at the questions we have from online.
Well, okay.
I've been sent to the pigeonhole.
This was the, we've already talked about this one. Is it? No, I've already asked this question. The last slide should be.
Okay, my mistake.
Yes. Please, feel free to use this system.
No, I would just like to appeal to any, so rather than questions, any other latent, either best practices or project ideas things that have been piloted in anybody's respective domains and cities that might serve as a good, either playbook or test case for us to consider, especially for the organizers that are trying to find like tangible projects to pursue after this. So please don't be shy.
Yes.
I would just like to, I'm a bit naive, and I think that often what we are trying to solve here are somehow symptoms, and there are a few attempts to go to the roots of the problems, but we are trying to work at the symptoms very often. Like, I don't know, we have problems in our universities, so we put video to survey, but we don't try to understand why we have those problems and go to the roots. I agree totally, we need regulations, but with the society we are creating, access to AI is becoming very, very easy. Access to genetic manipulation via CRISPR-Cas9, almost in the backyard, anyone can do it. And it's going to be very hard to regulate things unless we manage to motivate people into adhering to a common sense. And I think it's also important to investigate
Yeah, for example, one of the main motives I'm here is precisely to look for partners, other universities, citizens, organizations that want to join this common effort. I mean, in ICRAC, for example, we are very focalized in ethical relations with weapons, meaningful human control, but we also are trying in the cities we operate. For example, in leading cities, we have operations right now in more than 10 cities worldwide, and we are working very hard with public administrations in order to establish ethical guidelines, regulations, because we know the lack of global regulation, and we want to address the problems, and we want to address the philosophical, sociological, anthropological origin of the problem. And this is one of the important things that I believe that we have the responsibility to do before it's too late.
I just want to add, I think one needs to focus those kind of discussions on very specific applications. You talk about autonomous weapons. That is an area that needs to be regulated and managed carefully from all sides. I think just there's so many good applications as well. So one just needs to decide what do you regulate, what not. So it's going to be available. You're absolutely right. So it's not like nuclear power. It's open source. You've got the technology available. It's up to us to use that. So I think it's going to be not simple. Yeah. So, any other contributions, comments from blockchain guys there? I know there's a lot of visionary leadership.
Okay, I suppose, we're from blockchaincompany.info, and the first thing we wanted to do was to actually help people discover the blockchain, because when you ask people about it, everybody knows what Bitcoin is, but the moment you mention what is the blockchain, people get very confused. Now, we believe that the blockchain will actually help organize or reorganize a lot of the problems that we have across a whole spectrum of industry as well as communities today. We are taking a very long-term vision in terms of how we evolve the ecosystem that we're building, starting from the Discovery platform that you see, morphing into a live broadcast TV utility that would explain the impact of this new technology, and then going on to one of the reasons why we came here today is we're intrigued about things like smart cities. We were in Cape Town 2 months ago, where we actually met Jacques and some other people. The water shortage problem there is something which is impacting other parts of the world where we think the blockchain can actually help solve problems such as that. Like the lady here talked about and mentioned earlier on how you can tokenize situations like that. We have to use the blockchain to provide incentives to our citizens and communities. They can then use those tokens because they're incentivized to limit their carbon footprint, for instance, consume less water or wastage. Even in fact, for instance, I was listening to something by IBM, I think it was, that suggested that plastic waste has become valuable. There's a way we can probably start to incentivize through tokenization our global communities where they collect plastics that can then be reused in lots of different ways. In terms of, unfortunately, we missed some of the speeches earlier on. When I look at places like Africa or parts of Asia and South America particularly that are emerging economies, is it possible that we can help develop what we might call smart neighborhoods? Why wouldn't we use fourth industrial revolution technologies to transform little ghettos, if you want to call them that, or townships as we have them in South Africa? I would like to see, like Andrew Funk has actually been focusing on homeless people. It's very important that we understand that AI is going to eliminate jobs, but if we use it effectively, combined with the blockchain, then I think it is possible that we can really move towards what we call that type 1 civilization. So I would like to just know from Jacques and your colleague there again, is that are you seriously considering blockchain as a tool for good to augment that with artificial intelligence to help organize and solve a lot of these problems?
Definitely, as I've alluded to earlier, you can see the talk as well, but I specifically, I think the way I'm looking at it, it's a smart technology toolbox. And blockchain has got a very definite role to play. And I mentioned also in healthcare, we talked about governance as well, and privacy and all of that. Who gets access to my health data, for instance? That is another example of where blockchain can play a great role, at least on a transactional level. Who gets access to what, to just facilitate that. But pretty much for everything. You can think about property, you can think about so many different things. And I think the whole reward mechanism is great. So it's clearly part of the solution. For me, is one of the technologies that we should be looking at. And there are talks around decentralized autonomous systems and AI. I think Trent McConaughey is also here tomorrow. There's going to be talks around those type of things as well. So you will hear more about blockchain. Håkan, you want to say something about?
Well, I believe blockchain it's also a promising technology, and as any kind of technology has its bright side and the dark side that we have to be also taking care of, because it's true that it can allow us to track transactions, it can be a tool for government and transparency, it can be amazing in so many ways, but if we make a radical application, it can affect the privacy of the individuals and how we also can track our own personal transactions, and as humans, not as public institutions that they need to be transparent, but as humans we need to have shadow areas around us. We all have secrets and we need secrets to survive. We lie to survive so many times in life. Blockchain can difficult it sometimes, so we also have to pay attention to that.
Maybe just want to add to that. So my message on the purpose is around how to shape a better future. This is what. So we can use these technologies. I think blockchain specifically is great to empower citizens. So it's because it's decentralized. AI can be utilized to help navigate smart contracts and all of that, and we can shape that contract as well. So we should use these tools to help us as a human species to live better life, quality of life. I think on the first day there was talks around also visualize what that future look like. Even if you think about homelessness, that perfect future where we solve that. How do we get there? What is those steps? When I talk to companies and helping them to become AI first or more data driven, we always start with the business KPIs. You think about also how can they monetize data, how can they actually thrive in the smart technology era. And so you start with the end game, you start with the outcomes, and then you work through what is necessary, what is all the building blocks that I need to help solve this problem. And it's the same here with empowering citizens. So it's let's use these technologies, and we're doing it. Well, the good thing is there's people doing it. Frans Albert, you've got a comment?
Yeah, I'd like to add to that, and I think that if you combine blockchain with the ability of people, you will be able to match demand and supply much easier. And I discussed it this morning with Andrew. Homeless people, they have one thing a lot, and that's time. And they know the city very, very well. So use that ability instead of looking at them that, oh, they're homeless and they have a lot of disabilities. And this is also one of the systems we look into in Amsterdam. There's a certain area within the city of Amsterdam that there, say, for example, there's 100 people who are entitled to social benefit. But there are also other benefits they're entitled to. But they're only usually 30% of those benefits. And by using blockchain, by matching that profile according to other people and matching that with the benefits they're entitled to, you give them a better life. And in the past, cities or local governments would say, oh, don't try to encourage them to come to social benefit because that's going to cost the city a lot of money. But in the long run, if people are not happy, they're costing society much, much more money. So I totally endorse your approach and the way you carry out things there.
Awesome. Great. Any other comments, questions? Yep.
Sorry, I've just been following the conversation, and I'm kind of amazed actually at the language being used. To be honest, it feels to me a bit like 1984 George Orwell. Everything is for good. Everything's about empowering people. There's an idea, there's almost this kind of naive idea that technology is going to change the world. It's really refreshing because I'm a cynic and I'm a technologist and a designer. But I do believe if Google says no, do no evil, let's not be naive here. Like if you design the car, you design the car accident. And I think we need to be a bit more careful about things like blockchain, because we vote for somebody and that vote can be there forever. That person can, you've seen a lot of strife, like you've seen people being taken by various kind of ethnic groups, ethnic cleansing. So I'm just wondering, maybe this is something we need to think about as a vocabulary we use, because there seems to be a lot of solutionism in the room here, and what we don't really understand is the social problems. So I hope we have a bit more rigor in understanding the problems of jumping to the solution.
I fully agree. And I actually read an article by Henry Kissinger yesterday. I actually posted on LinkedIn as well. We talked about the end of enlightenment a little bit, but it's a thoughtful thing. And he was saying that we're not thinking, there's not enough time to think. There's a lot of information that you just need to handle, but there's not a lot of thinking going on and a lot of proper context. And I think it's very important what you're saying. So you need to think about what is the impact, what's the effect of what you're trying to do. So we should put a lot more emphasis on that. Also agree with the terminology. Maybe that terminology needs to be framed around a bit more thinking, so you can think about the impact.
I think one of the things we're sitting here on the ITU, and that hasn't been much discussion, even though it's very boring, at the end of the day, is standards. People have spent a lot of time defining standards in data and privacy. There's the BSI, there's ETSI, there's multiple organizations. I don't think we need to be that naive. There is a lot of good work and expertise. So I think we need to build upon the work that's happening and see how we can tap upon that and do the real world examples like my colleagues out there have been talking about. How do you operationalize the knowledge in this room into a real world pilot, but at the same time take some of the data models, that all the stuff that's been done, and take it to the next level. My worry is that in every time you come to a conference like this, you see new projects, and there's a sense of people forget there's a lot of work that's already been done. So how can we stand on the shoulders of giants at the same time move the dialogue forward?
Good point. Agreed.
Sorry, just one thing actually I was fascinated by is when you go for like hackathon, for example, on the smart cities or like the people that they're working with, I mean, the global scale, in the global scales, one of the things is that, I mean, they really don't think about the business part, but the thing is that if it's not profitable, it will die at some point. Like there are too many like psychologists that they can help you, for example, for the homeless people. But the thing is that if you're not paying them, and it's not just the taxes that people pay, then it should go for them. I think if you're developing something, if you can have services for other places, other companies, then you can make the money there and apply it here, and also like make that community also profitable. And like the lack of having a clear business plan usually like just kill them after a few years.
Yeah, sustainability is very important. Yeah. So I had a discussion with the Alan Turing Institute with guys in London as well. They are just talking about that as well. They talked about data studies where they're looking at problems, empowering the people to help solve it, but they want to make sure that the whole thing is sustainable as well. So we're looking to actually collaborate and working with them, creating more sustainable things. So you've got people that's empowered, but that can actually use the skills and continue with this. So yeah.
If I can respond, we focus on generating value with them. So we're not hanging out waiting for subsidies by the government. For example, if they do day labor, we split the benefit of what they do 50-50, and that gets reinvested into the system. If we get a part-time job, 10%, so we're creating wealth with them. And related to the scientific thing, we have a university and we're defining a scientific formula of how to create work with homeless people with a board of 20 international professionals. So it's not trying to figure out how to move them without a business model. The business model is what will make it sustainable. We presented to the Rothschild Foundation, and their main thing was, how do you get rid of donations?
Just one thing, it's like clearly you have the business plan, because also one of the first things is that to know the market, like the people that they're working on. And the best thing is to just go to them and see what's the need and how we can improve. For example, I don't believe that the homeless people, they have time. If you don't sleep at night, I think you cannot work during the day also. And when the quality of the life decreases, then even that time is not that useful. So yeah, that's well done.
Yep, quality of life. There was one question. Final question?
It's actually more of a statement, because I'm originally from Rio, like Renato, and I admire a lot the work he does, so thank you very much for leading the session today. I'm parachuting into your session because I'm attending the Conference on Science and Technology for Development across the road at UNCTAD, and Renato asked me to describe a little bit what I'm doing in blockchain space. So very briefly, I have been involved for 5 years, and currently I'm running a conference series in Switzerland. We're already in a 5th edition. It's a 3-day around table that brings people from all around the world. We're taking that worldwide, so if you're interested in something like that, please do let me know. Second thing is the publication of a quarterly journal, which will be peer-reviewed by the alumni of my conferences, and that's coming up this summer. I'm also working on the blockchain documentaries. So we'll be doing blockchain in specific industries, and we most certainly intend to do blockchain and smart cities. I have a few other things that I could talk about, but if anyone is interested in those 3 topics, please come and grab me at the end of the session. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Over to you, Alexander.
Yeah, thank you so much. It could last forever, but we'll have to end this session, and unfortunately to end the day also for this entire smart city and community track. I hope that this session was a good way also to show that we want to build on existing projects. That was exactly the purpose, and making sure indeed that we can work on standards. That's also the purpose of another session tomorrow, which is about data and AI commons. The purpose of the session will be to try and find within all the tracks that has been basically working all day, what are basically the best practices that have been identified, what data we should work on, what should be prioritized. And I invite you all to be part of this tomorrow, because it would be a way to sum up a little what we've done today and see the connections between the tracks.
And a lot of people came to talk to me asking for the presentations and context. So we were discussing, I have created a chat with all the speakers during the 3 months of organization of this track. So we invite everyone that wants to connect with us. We have a chat in LinkedIn, so just connect with me or with Alex in LinkedIn, and we put you inside the chat, and so you're going to be connected with all the speakers. The idea is to not finish here or tomorrow and to keep cooperating. So I think that's the best way. Let's use technology for good, right? Thank you very much. Well, we have the final part now tonight of the social part of the event, and tomorrow morning you're going to be here again. Thank you very much.